Hi, I'm Simon Amwer. I'm here on the University Campus Oldham Games Art course, and I'm going to be demonstrating today just a little bit about rigging and about a little bit of motion capture, which I'm going to add in the future to it. Okay, just running here through a rigging process, being able to make the character animatable. You can see the underlying rig in there that would go underneath the character. It just involves making the outer layer, making the model what we call a skin. And then I can add that rig I showed you before, that little coloured rig, add them all as bones, and with like the fingers have to be aligned. If I make this transparent there, you can see just the alignment of the fingers, where the fingers are supposed to be. It's just a case of making things line up, making sure the elbow joints are in and the knee joints are in the right place. And now let's go through a process of what we call weighting. So if I knock that see-through off, and just to make this easier to work with a little bit, I'm just going to get rid of my rig, hide it away so I can see things clearly. So I'm going to edit the envelopes. And the envelopes are these little strings which are representations of that rig, which I just hid away. And what I'm going to do now is what we call setting the weighting. I select the little corners on the model, or the vertices. I bring up my weight table. So I want this representation of the bone from my rig to control only this forearm area. You can see the blue is affecting a bit of the hand, the blue is affecting some of the upper arm, so I want to constrain that just to this piece. So I'm going to select the vertices here. I'm going to select those few. I'm just going to grow that selection. I'm just going to back out now. Because that's all is in a separate piece, when I just use this sort of rough expansion of the selection, it doesn't move to the hand or the forearm because that's still a sort of separate piece within the whole. So that bone will now only affect that forearm area when it comes to animating it.
Yeah, good. So the final outcome that I created was this very sort of crazy 1950s woman with like really beautiful hair and like a really flowing dress, and then she had this giant axe that would like kill zombies with, and it was quite a fun idea that we came up with, and and the sort of outcomes we had for it. So I came up with these quite fun, funky ideas. Where I'd had like all the background all like burning and looking like she's just had a fight with something, but also I tried to make the paper make it look like paper. And I also created another one that was more of a cleaner idea, so it was like the very advert-esque sort of like very sexist pose of the new zombie axe, even a woman can use it sort of idea that was I thought was quite fun and quite a good laugh, and it's got all the zombies in the background and things, but I thought that this was a good way to display my final character.
So my name is Thomas Ashley Fenton, and I'm a third year student at Digital Arts Practice, Oldham Campus, Huddersfield University. And basically what I was doing today is going to show you some of the projects I've been working on. Okay, so yeah, growing up as a kid I was playing a lot of games and really just drawing all the time, and now I've managed to progress through that and take on board that kind of passion and come to university to dive into it a little bit more. I've managed to take some of what I was doing in my childhood and kind of bring it to life in my eyes at the moment with the skills that I've acquired through the last 3 years. So here's a concept that I was doing throughout this module in the third year, and basically what I wanted to do was try and get the cartoony approach that I was get in when I was playing the games called Final Fantasy when I was a kid. So as soon as I achieved this and knew where I wanted to go with the creation of a game character, I decided to kind of like dive into the story a little bit more and find out where I kind of wanted it. But before I did that, I thought it was important to get some visual research. As you can see, he's a samurai sort of character, so I went and looked at samurai photos. I even did a painting here of a samurai to try and learn a little bit about the kind of materials that they would dress in and such for when I did the 3D model. After that, I decided to continue further and try and do a more realistic painting of maybe a souped up version of the character to try and have a look at what I learnt from the reference painting and taking it through to a more imagination kind of painting.
Okay, what you're looking at is the buffers I created for the map.
Oh, for trains.
Yeah, well, no, not for trains, for minecarts.
Oh, okay.
To stop minecarts from
I thought this was like
going
Thomas
off.
Tank Engine.
It could be.
This is TF2 map.
That's the first capture point area of me and my team's created map. It's closest to red spawn, and it would be the first thing that the members of the red team would capture after spawning. But I created this entire area.
Nice one, mate.
To put it simply.
I'll find a better answer.
Didn't the capture point itself come with hammer? Or is that actually, you have to make the capture point yourself?
Oh, you just like
Yeah, it
place
just comes with the camera.
So is this like done in an engine, in the Source engine? Or?
Yeah,
Yeah,
in
Hammer.
Hammer.
It's
There
the
you go.
creation kit for Source Engine.
Oh, right, yeah.
So likewise, you have access to all the Valve assets.
I'm Hayden Robinson. I'm just going through one of my character models at the moment. Been doing a lot of testing for the final renders for the upcoming show. This year I'm in my third year. This year I've been going with something low poly, something that could be presentable on mobile phones or handheld consoles, stuff like that. So generally you can see here just something very basic. So, a hungry ghost, essentially. I have added textures, as you can see here. I made these in Photoshop. I've got the normals and the bump and the diffuse. I've imported these into UDK. There should be a small clip of that. There's a total of 3 characters. This is the second one that I've worked on. There's a main character as well, and the flying octopus thing. They'll all be in a scene in different renders. There'll be about 4 renders, and you'll be able to see that in the show reel.
So this is the motion capture part. This is a motion capture which I performed, put on a suit, and in this very room we have our motion capture rig. And the suit has reflectors on it, which would correspond to the little points here. So I had a little suit on which had little reflectors all on these little points, and it creates this data. And I performed this myself of a little Charleston dance, and the purposes of the rigging there on my model is to be able to eventually transfer this data over onto that rig once all the weight is selected, so like I did the forearm earlier, making sure that movement of the forearm was only affecting the forearm on my model as well. And that is my motion capture data here.
This is something I created a while ago inside of 3ds Max. I used simple objects such as a box and cylinders to create complex items. I created this nice, highly detailed version of a futuristic kind of like railgun for a foot soldier.
Stop.
I am using a Cinti Companion, which is a very, very nice, beautiful piece of equipment. And a software I'm using is ZBrush, which is a 3D sculpting tool. I want to focus on a cyberpunk character, and then as I'm sculpting on a separate screen, I'll have that reference going. So every so often, I'll look back at it, and if it's something I like, I'll incorporate into the design.
So yeah, going on to 3D using ZBrush, which is a program that enables you to sculpt onto geometry. As you can probably see, there is polygons in this, many of them, and it basically took me a while because I had to create different subtools and implement them onto the mesh. And the way that I learned to get through ZBrush was simply to go online and check out tutorials, but also to use the digital tutors that comes with the university to find out about how the basics work. From there on, it was a case of just trial and error, failing over and over again to succeed in the eventual state. And as I was going through this, I was finding that I was being very repetitive with my workflow, and it all started to come together the same way I started out with it. It was only near the end where I was approaching with more details that I was actually using more of a newer technique to my sculpting. But there are parts in this, like the scroll, where I would use 3ds Max because it has better functions to create that kind of object quicker. So that was kind of made in 3ds Max and then brought through to ZBrush. After I did the 3D model, I went on further to paint it and render it and pose it and colour it, and basically just like texture it. And this is the kind of outcome that I got. It still needs a little bit of work. It's not fully there yet. I was getting quite a lot of problems through posing and stuff because it moves everything about in ways that you probably don't want it to because it doesn't actually know what it's dealing with, essentially. But as an artist, you get to play around with that and fiddle about with that. So all through here was the approach I wanted to take was through the study of doing the paintings of the materials and such. I was able to kind of grasp an idea of what kind of effect and what kind of materials I wanted to have on the character. So if we go closer in, you can see that there is dents and scratches in the metallic armour with golden parts like buttons to hold them in place, and then leather straps with little bits of wear and tear with texture sculpting brushes onto the lacquer boxes, which for the story of the character, these lacquer boxes would hold spirits inside, like dragon spirits, which you could summon, as he is a summoner. Basically going over these with an alpha, which is a pattern that you can create in Photoshop and take it through, and you can mask that over the top and change the colour of it, and it kind of gives it that kind of pattern effect.
I did a character creation. Here we've got the progressing character and the final character at the end. This is the board, and quite similarly, we've got, this is the Our Town, which was kind of like we got put together in a group to create, to work together in a studio-like environment to create a town for a client. And I was given a primary school. This is an overall shot of it, and then this is an iteration of one of my earlier ones, and that's the final one. This is my Cintiq, and it is a very clever piece of technology that allows me to draw digitally straight on here.
Right, this is Our Town. It's a project we made for Oldham Theatre Workshop. The idea was that it's an online soap opera, and the producer of it wanted a town that he could use as reference.
We basically all began as 3 teams, all doing a map in our own style, and then we put it all 3 to the client, and he decided which one he liked best. We're all given specific areas to work on. Mine was the NHS building here.
Terraced houses, a church, a mill, an academy. There's 13 locations all in all. I was originally going to do the barber shop and the takeaway. Well, I gave it these park benches and bike racks, and I made the windows look a bit more windowy, should we say.
The church was pretty fine itself, so I didn't do too much. I detailed it up, extended it out a bit, and then extended it up. Moved the clock tower a bit higher, as you would see on a church.